And I call the Honourable Member for Durack.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'd like to start off by saying what a privilege it is to be an Australian citizen and to be in this chamber today. Remembrance Day this year was a truly memorable ceremony, although we did get a little bit wet at the War Memorial, and it highlights and reinforces the fact that we truly do live in the best country in the world. And we have freedoms which millions of other people from around the world can only dream of, Deputy Speaker. Australians have died so that we can enjoy our Australian way of life. Deputy Speaker, we are now coming to terms with the recent Paris, Beirut and Mali terrorist attacks. It's clear now, Deputy Speaker, that no place is immune from the threat of this evil. Australia and other world leaders must coordinate their efforts, both politically and from a military perspective, to defeat those who choose to do us harm and to whom human life has no value. This is a matter of urgency, Deputy Speaker. We must ensure that our borders and our Australian way of life is protected. Today I'm pleased to rise to speak on the Australian Citizenship Amendment Allegiance to Australia Bill 2015. Deputy Speaker, the review of Australia's counter-terrorism machinery chillingly found that the terrorist threat in Australia is rising, and I really wish I had the same level of uplift view of what the world would be as the member for Parkes, but unfortunately I don't. Specifically, the number of Australians joining extremist groups overseas is increasing. The number of known sympathisers and supporters of extremists is increasing. And Deputy Speaker, so is the number of potential terrorists also on the rise. Mr Deputy Speaker, Australian security agencies are currently managing over 400 high-priority counter-terrorism investigations. This has more than doubled since 2014. Therefore, now is the time to act, and act this government will. Deputy Speaker, this bill will deal with the threat caused by dual citizens who act in a manner contrary to their allegiance to Australia. And let me make this point. If you are doing no wrong, you have nothing to fear from this bill. Mr Deputy Speaker, as I've said, the time is to act now. About 110 Australians are currently fighting or engaged with terrorist groups in Syria and Iraq. They're only the ones we know about. About 190 people in Australia are providing support to individuals and groups in the Syria-Iraq conflicts through financing and recruitment, or are seeking to travel. And again, Deputy Speaker, these are the only ones that we know about. This bill will provide for the loss of Australian citizenship in the case of dual nationals engaged in terrorism-related conduct. This bill, Deputy Speaker, amends the Australian Citizenship Act of 2007 to insert a purpose clause setting out the fundamental principles upon which the amendments are based. It also outlines circumstances in which dual citizens cease to be an Australian citizen through their engagement in terrorism-related activities. Deputy Speaker, this bill has been widely consulted, having been referred to the Parliamentary Joint Committee for Intelligence and Security for an inquiry and the resulting report, with the committee tabling its report last month, making a number of recommendations which have been included in the bill, Deputy Speaker. It is in line with the bipartisan recommendations from the committee. Mr Deputy Speaker, citizenship, which I'm sure it's been said many times during this debate, should not be taken for granted. This bill is a necessary and an appropriate response to the increasing likelihood of a terrorist threat. Mr Deputy Speaker, this bill is so important to my electorate of Durack because my electorate is so sparsely populated. So large, and I'm sure there's other electorates like it, we require a helicopter to muster cattle, and we've also got billions of dollars of resources projects dotted around the coastline and inland as well. I'd have more volunteer sea rescue bodies than any other Australian electorate, and Durack would have more visits of the Royal Flying Doctor Service because of the amount of towns in this incredibly remote electorate. And we need to make sure Australia remains a safe country. As a federal member, I have an obligation to not just keep my constituents of Durack safe, but of other Australians as well. This government was elected to deliver a strong, prosperous and innovative economy for a safe and secure Australia. The Turnbull government is 100% determined to protect the community from those who are engaged in or are supporting terrorist activities who seek to do us harm. Mr Deputy Speaker, this bill enables the government to strip Australian citizenship from dual nationals who participate in terrorism or terrorist-relating activities. As I say, if you've done no harm, you have nothing to fear. It will ensure that the over 400 towns in my electorate of Durack and over 90,000 constituents remain safe. Last week, as I said at the start of this speech, we commemorated one of our most important days on the Australian calendar, Remembrance Day. And we all around Australia, including in Durack, took a moment of silence. So from plumbers and tradies in the north, to farmers in the Midwest and the wheat belt, to small business owners in the Gascoyne, Deputy Speaker, they all stopped to pay their respects to those who put their lives on the line to ensure Australia is the great country we all love today and continues to be so. Those very same people illustrated that they would rather show their respect and appreciation than perhaps lose a phone call for another job or perhaps give up half an hour of work. And I think this speaks volumes about Australia and the people of Durack, that they too want to keep Australia safe. Deputy Speaker, we cannot go soft on terrorism. We must keep Australia safe, and our standards we apply to allow people who we choose to enter this country and remain in this country. I'm sure it's been said a number of times in this debate, we know it's not rocket science, but it sure is common sense. It is plain and simple common sense. We must not weaken. We must strengthen the laws of who can and cannot come into this country. Someone who loses their citizenship automatically receives an ex-citizen visa. If they are on shore, they lose their Australian citizenship. That is what is proposed in this bill. That visa may then be subject to cancellation on character grounds. Mr Deputy Speaker, this bill will legislate that a declared terrorist organisation will be a subset of those who are listed for the purposes of terrorism offences under the Criminal Code. As I've said in this House earlier this month, only those sitting on this side of the House, Deputy Speaker, have a track record when it comes to immigration policy. So effective is our Stop the Boats initiative that the Labor Party virtually endorsed it at their national conference in June this year. This bill we're discussing today will further strengthen Australia's border control and ensure we maintain our high standard of migration standards. Deputy Speaker, there's no doubt that society has changed and we as legislators must move with society. I recommend this bill to the House.